Hi everyone, this is Daniel. Just got back from Toronto, the second round of testing. Um, I've got a phone call about a week ago saying that they could book 2 days of solid testing for the liver transplant. It was very interesting this time. A whole bunch of tests over the 2 days. It was definitely a little tiring having it all clumped together, but we decided that that would be best uh, because I have to travel a couple of 100 kilometers to and from the hospital. They were able to book it all together into 2 days for me. So I had about 9 appointments over those 2 days. Uh, and the appointments were quite varied, everything from blood work to CT scans. So I figured I'd just go over a little bit of what all the testing that happened and the experience I had with that. So I'll just look at my little sheet here to see what exactly went on. So the first thing that happened, I went down the day before the testing. The testing started at 7 in the morning at Toronto General. So the night before, I stayed at the Delta Chelsea. For anybody who's going down for anything to do with the medical, they do have a couple medical rooms. They have a deal worked out with the hospital where they can give you a subsidized rate. Most of the time you do need a letter from one of the doctors at the office. They just fax that off and then you're able to get a reduced rate. In my case, the regular price of the room was $169 a night. I was able to get it for $125. Now through the pre-laud, which I'll talk about probably in the next video, I will be getting reimbursed for that money eventually, but you do have to put the money out first to secure the room. And one of the things to keep in mind, which I didn't realize, was that you actually have to put out a substantial amount of money, security deposit, on the room as well. So it was $290 for the room, and they asked for $250 security deposit on top of that. Now I didn't have that money, so they let me get away with a $50 security deposit. But I'm pretty sure that was a special case. I had nowhere to go, and I really did need to stay at the hospital, or at that hotel, sorry. So the lady was able to give it to me for a $50 security deposit, which I appreciated. I didn't expect to have to put that extra money out, but it's just something to be aware of. That was my first time ever booking a hotel, so I wasn't aware of that. So I stayed there for the night, and the following morning at 7 o'clock, I went to let's see here, it was a ground floor admitting department for pre-admission. Now this is a very long meeting. It was well over 3 hours long. Basically you go in, the nurse comes in, does your blood pressure, the anesthesiologist comes in, talks to you about pain regulation, what would happen during the surgery, the different options you have after your surgery. Then the medical consult comes in, basically goes over all the tests you've had with you, make sure you're making an informed decision about what you're trying to do. Basically just goes over everything that everybody else has gone over with you. And all of the people I met during this were actually quite nice. It wasn't particularly streamlined. I probably spent at least half of the 3 hours waiting for people to come into the room. Now there are a whole bunch of people who are there doing pre-admissions, so it's understandable that they can't just do it boom 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 and have you out in an hour. So after that, I had a meeting with a social worker, which is, I believe is specifically tied to the transplant department. And This gentleman was amazing. He went over a lot of stuff, a lot of the financial stuff. One of the things he said was, his job to make sure that I don't suffer financially through this, because there is going to be a fairly substantial financial factor in this for me. I'm going to be losing between 6 and 8 weeks of work, which some of that will be covered by EI sick benefits. I'm going to have to fundraise quite a bit of it coming up, but also things like filling out the pre-laud, which is basically a reimbursement program for anybody who's thinking of donating either liver or kidney, lung, whatever it is. And so he brought to light a lot of the things I didn't know that I could claim. Things like days I missed from work to do the testing, advice about keeping receipts. This goes here and there. And I will be put in contact with somebody else who's going to help me actually fill out the forms and submit them. So that meeting was followed by the MRI. So it was an abdominal MRI of the liver. It's the first MRI I've had of an organ. The last one I had was of my shoulder. So this one was very different. It was basically one long breathing exercise, about 45 minutes long. So when you go in there, you go in early. They put you in a gown. Then you get ready to go. They bring you into the room. They put you on the table. They put an IV in because for soft tissue like organ imaging, they needed to put a contrast dye in. And that dye, there is certain risks involved with it. Some people do react to the dye. I don't know if you can see my face right here. I think this is actually a reaction to the dye I got from the CT scan, which is a different kind of contrast dye from the MRI. But the MRI took 45 minutes because your liver sits amongst all of your other organs. Your breathing actually shifts it around your body, and in order to have them get a clear picture of your liver, it has to be in the same spot every time they take a series of images. So there's a breathing exercise where a person will come over the headphones and tell you to take a deep breath and hold it, and you have to try and take the same deep breath as the one you did before, and that has to be done consecutively over the 45 minutes. So you'll either have to breathe in and hold it, or breathe out and hold it, or they'll tell you when you can just breathe normally. So the process of the dye for that one, when they put the contrast dye in, it is a bit of a cooling sensation, but it was nothing extreme. I didn't really notice when it was going in at first. And yeah, the time did pass relatively quick. I was quite sleepy by the time I got out, and I was actually very lightheaded after the process, whether that was just almost falling asleep in the machine and then trying to meander my way through the hospital, I'm not sure. So that was the end of the day. My day ended at about 5:30. I went back to the hotel, just sat there for the rest of the night and watched TV. The next morning, I got up at 7. I went into the hospital. I had my final blood work done, which was just a secondary blood typing, just to make sure that they got the blood type right. That was followed by a surgical consultation with a doctor, just going over what's actually involved physically in the surgery, the process of cutting you open and, dissecting the liver. The doctor would go over the reasons why you wanted to do it. That was very common. Almost every single consultation I've had they've gone over again and again the reasons why you want to do it. They want to make sure there's something you really want to do, you're not being pressured into it. And I can understand that, but at the end of the day, it does get a little repetitive, so you just start hashing out the same thing over and over again. After that, I had my abdominal CAT scan. That was a more interesting one. It was very fast. I went in early. I got in early. The CAT scan itself only took about 10 minutes to do, and there was breathing exercises related with it as well, but they weren't nearly as long or complex as the ones for the MRI. The contrast dye for the CAT scan or the CT scan was actually very different and from the one from the MRI. This contrast dye, when it went into your arm, it felt very warm, and as it spread throughout your body, you could feel it. It was like a wave of extreme heat through your body, and it's actually quite, it takes you by surprise, because even though they warn you that it's going to happen, you're not quite prepared for it. It feels like if you're doing a workout and all of a sudden your pores open up when you're about to start sweating. It feels like that, but your whole body does it very strongly in a very short period of time. And associated with that is the smell and taste of metal. I didn't get the taste particularly or the smell, just a little hint of it, but it's definitely there. The other thing which I found quite interesting is that you also get the sensation that you've actually peed yourself, which is very unusual. So you'd be sitting there, and they warned me ahead of time, but it was still very disconcerting, laying in this bed with the nightgown on, and all of a sudden you have the feeling like you've wet, the thing you're laying on inside this machine. And that sensation lasted for maybe 20 seconds at the most. And then I got up, left. They gave me the warning that, it is possible to have a severe allergic reaction to this. Some people have a minor allergic reaction, which I think this is. I have had this before. I have had this dye before when I was younger, but I never had the reaction to it. They said that could happen. It will develop, over time. Just because you've had it before doesn't mean you're not going to have an allergic reaction the second or third time you have the dye. So this will go away in a few days. I just have to call them and let them know that I did have a reaction to something. And they said that most of the reactions are hives, some swelling, stuff like that. So after that, I forgot to mention, during my first surgical consultation of the morning, I was approached by two individuals from different research studies inside that are being done in the hospital about liver transplants. The first one being an adult-to-adult transplant study program. I don't know if I'll be donating to an adult or a child, so there was that one. They're studying the quality of the effect on your social quality of life, your quality of life physically and socially, after the surgery as compared to how it was before. So it's basically just a series of phone calls. They also take a tiny piece, now it's very, very small, it's like 0.5 gram of your liver when you're in surgery, and they put that into a storage bank for research purposes, which is fine. The second person was a study to find out if there's a correlation between a person's physical activity and their diet and the bacteria and different things that live inside the small and large intestine, and a fatty liver, how the fatty liver develops. So this study basically requires me to chart my eating habits and my exercising habits over a course of a week before the surgery, and then they will also take a tiny piece of the liver to analyze it for different things. I'm assuming it would be fat content mainly, and then they took a body fat measurement, or I think it's a body fat mass index or something like that. They basically just measure a whole bunch of different stuff on you, pinch your skin, all that kind of stuff. And then you also have to bring a stool sample in, because obviously they need to look at the bacteria that you have in you and how that relates to the health of your liver and the things you do and the things you eat. Both of these studies are completely optional, and I decided to do both of them. I mean, I'm already doing it. Apparently, liver transplants aren't the most common thing, so any data points that they can get helps out the studies they're doing, and it all contributes to the health and well-being of anybody who's going in for a liver transplant. So I was very happy to do that. After my meetings with them, which was after the CT scan. I then met with another doctor, a surgeon, and this one was actually quite humorous because up until this point, most of the surgeons I'd seen had been fairly optimistic about it. I mean, they go over the risks and this and that, but the last surgeon of the day I had, it almost seemed like a good surgeon, bad surgeon kind of thing, except this would have been sort of optimistic and not optimistic. So this surgeon was going over in great detail the risks associated with the operation, what I could expect after the operation, and there was really a sense of this surgeon trying to weed out anybody who is having second thoughts about it, because the way it came across as being kind of skeptical about anonymous donors donating. And there was definitely a push to, admit that I didn't want to go through with it if I didn't want to. I mean, I do want to go through with it, and I did find it kind of humorous listening to everything that was going on and him not understanding why somebody would want to donate and this and that. But at the end of the day, it was all very informative. He gave me every opportunity to say that I was uncomfortable with the surgery and I wanted to back out, which is an important thing to have. A lot of people, I think, need permission to say that, you know what, I can't do this, it's just too stressful, or I can't do it for whatever reason. And it's important to have permission for a lot of people to say, you know what, I can't do this. So that basically was the sum of my testing and my meetings. They didn't have the results from the MRI or the CT scan, which means that over the next, hopefully the next few days, maybe the next week, I'll get the results from that. If I'm anatomically compatible to donate a part of my liver, then we will start looking at finding a match and picking a surgery date. My target date is to be fully recovered before summer starts, which is actually quite quick. So if I approved for this and I'm allowed to move on to the next step of picking a date, the date will actually be relatively soon, probably sometime in March. That way I can be back to work for the busy season. If for whatever reason I get approved but we can't book a date for the time I'm looking for, then I'll probably wait until late summer, early fall, maybe in the beginning of September. That way I can work through the summer of our busiest season, and then have the surgery over the winter months, which will give me ample time to recover, and it won't impact the business negatively as well. Because one of the big things that I have to keep in mind personally here is that while I'm doing the I'm trying to do this, from a place in my heart, I also have to make sure that I'm not going to be jobless at the end of this. So that's one of the main things. At the end of the day, I would have the surgery in the middle of the summertime if somebody really needed a liver, if it was a life or death scenario. But optimally for me, it would be either before summer or after summer, so that I could have the surgery, recover, and still work the busy season. Yeah, so all in all, it was a very interesting experience. It was extremely busy. I was up very early both days. There was a lot of waiting around. At least half the time each day was spent sitting in a waiting room. I didn't have a laptop, and my tablet decided not to work. So I spent a lot of time drawing and writing when I was in waiting rooms and this and that. But yeah, once again, everybody that I talked to was very pleasant. They're all very informative. They answered any question I had. I didn't have terribly many of them, but they were always willing to go out of their way to answer anything that I wanted to know. So the next step now for me is just to wait for word as to whether or not I've been approved. And if I've been approved, then we move on to the next stage, which is booking the surgery. So I'm going to do a few videos this week covering the initial application form, and I'll do one of the pre-laud, which is the reimbursement paperwork. And I think I might do a video on the reactions I get from people, because the reactions I've received from anybody I've told has been varied greatly and not quite what I expected. So yeah, we'll go over that as well. But if you're still watching, I thank you for watching. I know this is definitely dry stuff, but I hope that for somebody out there who's thinking about doing this, that, you know, just hearing about it from somebody who's going through it will give you a better sense of what to expect. Thus far for me, nothing's been stressful. Everything has been geared to accommodate my schedule, and I felt very at ease with the whole process. So I'll continue with the videos. I encourage anybody who's interested, please check out the Trillium website. I mean, if you can, if you feel it's right, sign the organ donor card. They have a registry right online now, so all you need to do is sign up for that, and it's digitally registered. You know, if something happens, and you know, if unfortunately somebody does die, but they're registered digitally, then they'll know, and you know, we can get some more organs for this, for the hospitals, for anybody who's waiting for an organ, you know, whether it's a liver or kidney or lung or any of the huge variety of things that people need out there. There is a huge shortage right now, and it would be amazing if anybody could just go to that site and sign up. I think it would be greatly appreciated, not only by myself, but by everybody who's on the waiting list, by all the doctors and anybody in the medical field. Everybody really knows that there is a shortage, and it's something that we could turn around. So please check it out. Trillium Gift of Life. If you Google that, it'll should be the first one at the top of the list, and it'll have all the information you need. Once again, thank you for hanging around and watching this whole video all the way through, and I'll be posting some more shortly. Have a good day.